A quiet but sweeping expansion of federal surveillance and criminal investigations is unfolding across the United States, aimed not at foreign enemies or organized terror networks, but at domestic dissent. Internal FBI documents reveal that the Bureau has opened criminal and domestic terrorism investigations tied to opposition to immigration enforcement in more than 20 regions nationwide. At the center of this escalation is a Trump directive that reframes anti-fascist activism itself as a national security threat. The investigations trace back to a September presidential memo, NSPM 7, which ordered a new federal strategy to counter what the regime labeled anti-fascist violence. Issued after the killing of far-right nationalist activist Charlie Kirk, the memo does not merely condemn specific criminal acts, instead it defines a broad ideological current: anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity as inherently suspect, collapsing protest, belief, and violence into a single category. And that conflation is the point. Fascism historically does not begin with jackboots and mass arrests. It begins by redefining dissent as danger. By designating anti-fascism as an enemy ideology, the Trump regime performs a telling reversal. Those who oppose authoritarian politics are cast as extremists, while the state claims the sole authority to define patriotism. In that inversion lies the authoritarian logic itself. According to the FBI's November report, agents across at least 23 field offices are investigating threats linked to immigration enforcement. These cases range from alleged assaults on federal officers to broad domestic terrorism inquiries under NSPM 7. While the report references 2 violent incidents in Texas, it repeatedly relies on vague language, warning of reactive violence that allegedly exploits constitutionally protected protests. The warning signs listed are troubling not just because they identify violence, but because they normalize suspicion of ordinary political behavior. Indicators of potential threat include researching publicly available information about ICE operations, communicating through encrypted messaging apps, or expressing hostility towards immigration enforcement. None of these activities are crimes. All are common features of modern political organizing. Civil liberties advocates argue that this ambiguity is not accidental. By lowering the threshold for investigation, the regime creates a chilling effect. Activists may be watched, questioned, or stigmatized not for what they have done, but for what they believe. Surveillance becomes punishment in itself. This approach echoes post-9/11 counterterrorism tactics, where the FBI gained broad authority to open investigations based on minimal evidence. Former agents have noted that such powers make the number of investigations meaningless as a measure of real threat. What they do measure is political priority, and dissent is now firmly in the crosshairs. The regime justifies its campaign by claiming a dramatic surge in attacks on immigration officers, including a frequently repeated assertion of a 1,000% increase in assaults. Yet no supporting data has been publicly provided. Independent investigations paint a different picture. Many alleged assaults result in no injuries, relied on questionable officer testimony, or collapsed in court. Several high-profile prosecutions have ended in dismissals or acquittals. And despite this, the Justice Department under Donald Trump has doubled down. A December memo to federal prosecutors expanded the definition of domestic terrorism to include actions such as doxing law enforcement, disrupting immigration enforcement, or even picketing with the intent to obstruct justice. It explicitly cited opposition to immigration policy and support for open borders as potential extremist ideologies. This is a profound shift. The state is no longer targeting violence alone, it is targeting opposition. When protest movements are framed as terrorist ecosystems and non-profits are scrutinized as potential enablers, civil society itself becomes suspect. That is not counter-terrorism. It is political repression. The fixation on Antifa, or anti-fascists, makes this especially clear. There is no centralized Antifa organization, no membership roles, no command structure. The term describes a loose, decentralized tradition of opposing fascism, often through protest, sometimes through property damage, and occasionally through violence. But by branding Antifa a terrorist threat, the regime invents an enemy flexible enough to include almost any critic. Historically, authoritarian movements rely on this tactic, inventing an internal enemy defined more by ideology than action. Once dissent is recast as extremism, the state can claim emergency powers while insisting it is defending order. In this framework, opposition to the regime becomes proof of guilt. The irony is unavoidable. Fascism is characterized by the fusion of state power, nationalism, and the suppression of dissent. When a president uses federal law enforcement to surveil critics, criminalize protest, and equate ideological opposition with terrorism, the label anti-fascist ceases to be an insult. It becomes a mirror. The FBI insists its efforts target violence, not beliefs, but the document tells a different story, one of elastic definitions, ideological profiling, and fear-driven enforcement. As law enforcement agencies are encouraged to see protest as a precursor to terror, the line between security and authoritarianism blurs. In the end, the question is not whether political violence should be prosecuted. It should. The question is whether democracy can survive when the government decides that opposing it is itself a crime. By casting anti-fascists as the enemy, Trump does more than silence critics. He reveals the authoritarian impulse at the heart of his project, and in doing so, names what he has become. And to compound this, a moment that drew little attention this week came during an end-of-year reception at the White House where Trump's billionaire donor, Miriam Adelson, publicly encouraged him to pursue another term in office. Adelson told attendees that she had recently spoken with constitutional law professor and former Trump attorney Alan Dershowitz, who had given Trump a book outlining purported ways to circumvent the 22nd Amendment's limit on presidential terms. As the crowd began chanting 4 more years, the exchange underscored a familiar pattern. Trump periodically floats the idea of a third term, acknowledges the constitutional barrier, then leaves the door ajar. This time the message was unmistakable. Adelson, one of his most significant financial backers, was effectively signaling that if Trump chose to defy convention and explore another run, the money would be there to support it. And finally, when meeting with Zoran Mamdani in the Oval Office recently, Trump seemingly relished the idea of being labeled a fascist dictator by Mamdani, almost giving him license to say it out loud.
Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes. Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
I'm Anthony Davis. You can find me on the 5-Minute News YouTube channel and podcast, on Wednesdays co-hosting Uncovered, and on Sunday on The Weekend Show with MeidasTouch.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.